Hi, this is Daniel from the Ultimate Guitar Academy, and today I'm going to teach you some guitar licks that will help you memorize E minor pentatonic shape 1 up at the 12th fret. These licks are pretty standard, but the whole idea behind them is that they help you learn the shape and the notes for the scale. So as we go through these licks, bear in mind that we're playing E minor pentatonic shape 1 up here at 12, so position 12 you could call it. I would definitely recommend using those fingers for this scale here. So index plays the 12, pinky plays the 15s, ring plays the 14s. Okay, so let's have a look at the first lick. Sticking to the E minor pentatonic shape, remember our finger work here, we're going to apply that to the lick. Starting on the D, 12, we hammer to 14. And then the G is 12, 14. So. Then the B is 12. And if you think about it, we've just gone up the scale. We've just made one of the notes a hammer on, that's all. Chuck some vibrato over that 12. And then we go back to the 14 on the G. And we kind of stop there. And have a rest. And that's the first half of the lick. Notice the finger work, index and ring. Then, on the G, 12 hammer to 14. Then 12 on the B. And this is the tricky part, we need to roll to 12 on the G. I'll go through that again. So we had a hammer on the G, 12 to 14. The B is 12. Roll up to the G on 12. And then we finish 14 on the D string. Kind of tricky, hey? So the first half, second half. To get that roll of the 12 frets there, the B then the G, you might notice that the way I'm playing it, I hold the B a bit strange so that I can roll upwards and land correctly on the G. And the reason for that is I want to be able to roll upwards to the G. The only way I can do that is by starting the B incorrectly as though I've rolled downwards and then I reverse that. So in the past you might have tried something where you play like the G and you roll underneath. This is the same, just in the opposite order. So I have to start as though I just finished that kind of roll, that ascending roll. That's how I start, and then I play it in reverse. The timing for this lick, we actually start just after beat 3. So we go 1, 2, 3, rest, like that. I'll play it again. 1, 2, 3. And you can, go crazy with vibrato and everything like that if you want. One thing to note about this is it sticks to a pretty strict box. You hear that all the time, the box, structure on guitar. And people always say, how do I break out of the box? But really, you want to get to a point where you're stuck in the box, because then you learn it really well, right? If you want to learn something well, get stuck in it, and then you'll be, you'll play it all the time and you'll know it well. I almost consider it a rite of, passage for guitarists. If you want to get good at guitar, you have to get stuck in the box at some point, and you have to eventually learn how to break out of it. And it just takes time and effort and work and energy and all that sort of thing. But getting stuck in the box, not such a bad thing, because you're going to get good at it. And that's what we want. Notice we finish on an E. So that fits my E minor pentatonic quite well. And you can play that 12-12, with a bop if you want. Or you can have the notes ring out a bit longer. Not really a big deal. You can play it however you want, but learn the lick as it is and then go crazy making some variations of it. The next lick I really like, and that's because it goes a bit higher and has a nice bend. So on the B string, we start on 15, and we bend that 15 up to a 17. That is a tone bend or a full tone bend. When you play that bend, use your ring finger to hold the note, which is on the 15, and your other two, your index and your middle, are just behind on the same string, supporting. Notice my thumb is quite high. That's what gives me my strength and my grip, and I hold the string down and my whole wrist drives that string up. You can use some vibrato, and that's the first part, the two bends. From there, I need to jump to the high E on 12. Then I descend down my E minor pentatonic scale. Another reason why I like this lick. So we start with the bends, then descend. Once we get there though, we actually bend that G string up. I'll walk through that again. So we have the 15s, the two bends, then descend starting on the 12, so that'll be 12, 15, 12, then 14. Now that should be a tone bend. If you don't quite get the tone, it's not a big deal because it's pretty quick. Then we jump back up to the B string on 12, and then we descend straight down the scale. So that'll be 12, 14, 12, 14. You might be tempted to play that as a pull-off. For sake of learning the lick, I recommend not doing that. Play it exactly how we have it, with picking everything. No pull-offs in this lick whatsoever, or hammer-ons for that matter. You might notice that I kind of break a rule that I established earlier. I said the 15 should be your pinky finger. Now I'm using my ring. Now I do that for the bend, and then it comes back to that 15 so fast that it's worth keeping that ring finger for the 15. You could use your pinky if you want. Not a big deal. I would say this is one of the occasions where the ring or the pinky won't make a huge difference. Both are probably equally ideal. One reason I like this lick is you bend that E and then you go to an E, which is interesting. We bend a D up to an E, then we play an E. And on one hand that kind of makes sense because it's the note we're playing. It's just other ways of playing the same note. It's a real common guitar trait. So you bend a note, and whatever you bent it to, you then play that note somewhere else. And this just descends. It's kind of like two descending portions. And they're kind of similar, aren't they? Da-da-da-dun, da-da-da-dun. In fact, the way that it descends, it goes down the scale, then it goes up one note and descends again. In fact, when it does go up that one note, we're bending the G, which is an A note here, to a B note, and then we're playing a B note, which is kind of what we did earlier. We played a D, bent it to an E, and then played the E. So here we're bending the A to a B, and then we're playing the B. Same idea, we're bending a note and then we're playing the note. In terms of the timing for this, it starts on beat 1, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. But the second bend starts just before beat 2. So it's not like 1, 2, it's 1, 2, 1, a 2. And we hold that bend for all of beat 2. And then the last part's just da 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 da. And you can hold the last note however long you want to. We've notated a crotchet. but you can hold it for longer, slide it out, do whatever you want to do with that, have some fun. You'll find that the world of guitar is full of licks just like this, and I think of guys like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, Joe Satriani, all the blues, rock kind of guitarists. They will all have lots of stuff like this, especially the whole, that part. That's really common. The solo for Sweet Child of Mine has a lick that's very similar to that. Something like that. So it's a real common idea to play that little descending run on the guitar. It's, I don't know, it kind of just flows, you know, your fingers just naturally adapt to it. So it's a real common lick, something that you should definitely remember, memorize, take and adapt into your own improvising and playing. So our next lick is actually quite straightforward as well. On the A string, we're going to start on 12 and hammer to 14. Then 12 on the D. Slightly different now. A lot of people would expect this to go to 14, but we're not going to do that. We go to the G on 12. So we have the hammer, 12 to 14 on the A. The D is 12. The G is underneath, 12. And then we just go back to the D, and then we get the hammer from 12 to 14. Resolves to an E note, that's what that is, which is great for my E minor chord. In terms of how it fits with the beats, we wait till just after beat 3. So it'll be 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, 4, like that. So 1, 2, 3. You might notice I use that roll to get those two 12s. Real simple lick. It's nice because it's melodic and it uses just a small portion of my E minor pentatonic scale. Everyone always wants to play giant licks that uses, you know, the whole guitar neck, and they're great, but realistically, the most useful, beneficial stuff that I ever come across, it's always small, because small stuff you can adapt easily into your playing. Big stuff, it's hard to change because it's just so big. So I find personally that something like this is far more useful than all the big licks, even though they're a lot of fun too. Next up we have probably the hardest lick, at least in this position, that we're going to look at. We're going to have to break this into two halves, possibly even more, because it's just quite big and there's a lot there. On the G we start on 14 and we get 14, 14, 12, 14. And that's quite fast because they're all semiquavers. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Da 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 da. On the B, we go to 12. Still not too hard so far. Then on the G, we pull off from 14 to 12. So alternate picking is definitely the way to go because it's just so much easier. It's such a more economical way of playing. Then on the G, we go to 14 and we pull off back to 12. So we should have, I'll quickly recap on that. The G was 14, 14, 12, 14. The B is 12. And then the G is 14, pull off to 12. Then the D is 14, 12, 14, 14. So the next note on the G is 12. And at that point we should stop because there's a rest in the notation anyway. So we have a slight pause, and that's a great place for us to say, yep, there's a small portion of our lick. One thing you should really be careful of is this part here. Just make sure that you get 12, 14, 14, not 12, 12, 14. That's really common for people to accidentally play. So that's our first section of the lick. If I play that with the rest, it should sound like this. So that last note is actually quite short. The next small fragment of this lick is going to lead us into the second half. On the D, we get 14, G is 12, and the D is 14 again. You'll notice the fingers I'm using here are a bit weird. That's because the next part of the lick starts on the G on 14, and we bend. So you have some options here. You could go the weird way that I was playing, which is middle for the 14, because that frees my ring for the bend, which is coming up. You could use your ring for all the 14s, but that means a little hop down a string. If it's a slow tempo, then, sure, not a problem. If it's a fast song, then yeah, that's going to be a problem. So it doesn't really matter which way you go with. There's just different ways that will suit people differently, I would say, for this. It's not really a black and white rule like some of the other aspects of guitar can be. I'll go from the top. Now this bend that I've been talking about on the G is 14, and then 12-12 on the B and the high E. Notice I roll that finger for the 12s. Once you get to that part, you bend the B on 15. Notice I'm using my ring finger for that bend. And my other fingers are on the guitar supporting it, which is really how I played the bend on the 14. Then I have a little descending run, which is similar to one of the other licks we looked at. The high E is 12. The B is 15. Pull off to 12. I'm using my pinky there. You could use your ring. Either way, it's not a huge deal. And then the G is 14. Bend that up. After that bend, we jump back up the scale to the 12 on the B string and simply descend the scale. So this second half should sound something like this. If I go from the top, that's what we get. It's definitely a longer lick. There's a lot more in it, a lot more notes, and it's 2 bars instead of 1 bar. The way the timing fits can get a little complicated, and I don't really want to get stuck on the timing for this lick because that could quite easily happen. But the first part should just all be fast, even notes. They're all semiquavers with one rest in there. That's what we're after. The second half is da da da. So the timing there is, and then the last part starts with a pull off. Da 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 da. That's played with a picking instead of a pull-off. Now, because this lick is big, there's a lot we can take away from it. A few key points is that kind of up and down nature, playing the 14 twice. The repetitive nature of that is great for some fast guitar playing. Another really good takeaway is the start of bar 2. That is used all over the place. And here they bend the B afterwards. Another common version would be the high E. And then, of course, running down the scale works well. And that's exactly what they do here. So a little jump, common lick that jumps up and then just runs down the scale, finishes on the tonic. So it's actually a pretty straightforward lick. It doesn't take much to think of something like that up. As long as you've seen some, previous rock songs or blues songs, it really just steals, the ideas straight out of it. So one of my key takeaways for that lick would definitely be that small phrase. For you picking down, down, up, works well. Down, up, up, works okay as well if you're an up picker, but most people would probably go down, down, up. I definitely would say the high E should be up, and the starting note on the G should be a down. It just doesn't make sense for it to be otherwise. And our last lick for this position of E minor pentatonic starts on the G on 14. We bend that. High E is 12 and the B is 12. You might recognize that to be similar to a small portion of another lick that we looked at, which was here we've reversed the 12s. That's a real common, lick to play. Just another variation of the previous idea, really. And here we bend the high E on 15. It's a tone, so it should be quite high. Then on the high E we get 12, so then a pull off from 15 to 12, 15 on the B, back to the high E on 12, so, and then the B string is another pull off from 15 to 12, finishing with a bend on that 15, bends up to 17 of course, so I like this lick because it finishes on an E but with a bend, so it keeps that tension and the coolness of it. Good for a rock song. That starting lick, really common, but I really like the way it goes to the high E. Another variation of that is the B string. In this case we're sticking to the high E, but you can muck around with the B string as well. And this little pattern, that's a real common, lick that you get all the time. You can walk down the whole scale with that. Here we've just got a small part of it to finish off our phrase. The timing for this just starts on beat 1, and it should be da 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 da. One thing to note is that 12 at the start of that 12 there, it kind of happens just before the beat. So, ba 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 ba. So that 15 is on beat 3 of the bar. Bum ba 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 ba. So just something to consider. Again, the timing for these licks, it's not the most important factor, but it's good to learn and it's good to understand what's going on. It will make you a better musician as a result. Some takeaways from this lick would be that, first few notes there where we bend, and it's like we had a previous lick where we went 14, 12, 12, but here we swap the 12s. And the 15 we played on the B string I think before. Here we moved it to the high E. Now you can move it back to the B for your own variation, or you can keep it on the high E. You can even move it higher. You can do whatever you want to do with it, but it's just another thing to take away is that 15 itself we can move to a different string, different fret. Nothing says that we have to keep it in that location. And this little rundown, that's a really common, minor pentatonic phrase. I'm sure there are some Metallica solos off their first album where he plays that kind of idea. I think it's even in Ride the Lightning, I think he plays a lick that's similar to that. So really common idea, you can take it and apply it to anything, any scale, any position, any shape, but here we have it for the E minor pentatonic scale. So to recap, we started off with then we moved on to then we had our difficult lick was and our final lick. Thanks for learning these licks. Remember, as you practice them, try and imagine and visualize the scale that exists around the current notes you're playing. Feel free to modify these notes as well so that you can create your own versions of these licks. If you get stuck with anything, feel free to reach out to us over at ultimateguitaracademy.com. All the best, and until next time, keep shredding.